The great void of space lit up as another planet's defense systems failed. From the command deck of his massive warship, Overlord Krell watched with cold eyes as the blue-green world's orbital platforms crumbled under his fleet's gravitational weapons. He did not smile. There was no satisfaction in crushing bugs. "Another victory, Overlord," said his second-in-command. "That makes the 47th system this cycle." Krell merely nodded. The Variant Dominion had conquered thousands of star systems over centuries without facing any real challenge. Their pattern was simple: arrive, demand surrender, show their power, then take over. Most worlds gave up after the first demonstration. Those that didn't were made examples of. "Prepare the integration teams," Krell ordered, "and set course for the next system, the Sol system, Overlord, with the species called humans. Yes, our scouts report primitive technology, though they have achieved basic space travel. They will fall like all the others." Jack Mason stared out the viewport of the UES Defiant as Earth grew smaller behind them. At 42, his dark hair was starting to gray at the temples, but his eyes remained sharp and alert. After 20 years in the United Earth Space Force, this was his first command of a ship this important. "Captain, all systems are running at optimal levels," said the ship's AI system, VGJ, its calm voice filling the bridge. "Thank you, VGA," Mason replied, turning to face his crew. "How's our new drive holding up, Reed?" Engineer Talia Reed looked up from her station, pushing a strand of red hair from her face. "The experimental drive is stable, Captain, but I still don't trust it for more than a few light jumps without maintenance." Mason nodded. The Defiant was Earth's newest warship, built with technology that humans had developed on their own, plus some reverse-engineered from pieces of alien ships found over the years. It was the pride of the fleet, but still untested in real combat. "Lieutenant Bell, how are our weapons systems?" Mason asked. Marcus Bell, a young officer with steady hands and a calm demeanor, tapped at his console. "All weapons ready, sir. The new pulse cannons are charged at 100%. "And our guest?" Mason asked, turning to the final member of his bridge crew. Dr. Emma Wilson, the ship's xenobiologist, looked up from her datapad. "Still unconscious, Captain. The medical bay is keeping him stable, but I can't say when he'll wake up." Their guest was the reason for their mission. 3 days ago, a small alien ship had crashed on the moon. Inside was a badly injured alien, the first confirmed contact with intelligent life from beyond the solar system. Before falling unconscious, the alien had managed to transmit a single message: "They are coming. The Variant. Run." Earth's governments had argued for days about what to do. Some wanted to prepare for war, others for surrender, still others claimed it was all a trick. In the end, they decided to send the Defiant to the edge of the solar system to investigate. "Captain," VGA's voice broke into Mason's thoughts, "I'm detecting an anomaly at the edge of the system, just beyond Pluto's orbit." "On screen," Mason ordered. The main view screen flickered to life, showing empty space. Then a swirl of light appeared, growing larger. "Some kind of portal, sir," Bell said, his voice tight. "I've never seen anything like it." "Dr. Wilson." Mason turned to the scientist. She shook her head, eyes wide. "This matches nothing in our databases, Captain, but the energy readings are off the charts." The swirling light expanded, and then ships began to emerge. First one, then 5, then dozens. They were massive, sleek vessels with designs unlike anything humans had built, all curves and flowing lines, as if grown rather than constructed. "VEGA, count those ships," Mason ordered, his mouth suddenly dry. "I am detecting 76 large vessels and 143 smaller craft, Captain. Based on their size and energy signatures, they appear to be warships." The bridge fell silent. Earth's entire fleet consisted of just 31 ships, most of them smaller than the Defiant. "Orders, sir," Bell asked quietly. Mason took a deep breath. "Keep us at this distance. Let's observe for now." Reed, make sure our stealth systems are at maximum. Already on it, Captain. As they watched, the alien armada arranged itself into a perfect formation and began moving toward the inner solar system, toward Earth. The ship's communication system suddenly came to life with a weak transmission. This is refugee ship Talmer, to Earth vessel. The Variant have arrived. Must warn, never surrender. That's coming from our medical bay, Reed said. The aliens awake. Dr. Wilson, get down there, Mason ordered. Find out everything you can. 10 minutes later, Dr. Wilson's face appeared on the bridge screen, her expression grim. Captain, our guest is named Kelvar. His world was conquered by the Variant 3 months ago. He says they've taken over thousands of star systems without ever losing a battle. What do they want? Mason asked. Everything. Resources, technology, labor. They consider all other species inferior. They offer surrender before attacking, but the terms are always the same: complete submission or complete destruction. Mason looked back at the screen showing the approaching armada. How do they do it? How have they never been defeated? Their weapons manipulate gravity itself, Wilson explained. They can crush warships, defense stations, even city shields from a distance. No known species has found a defense against it. Captain, VEGA interrupted. The alien fleet has accelerated. At current speed, they will reach Earth in approximately 72 hours. Mason stood up, his decision made. We're returning to Earth immediately. The governments need to know what we're facing. As the Defiant turned back toward Earth, Mason looked again at the alien armada. Humanity had faced many challenges in its history, but nothing like this. How could Earth possibly stand against an enemy that had conquered galaxies without effort? Then he looked at his crew, Reed with her brilliant engineering mind, Bell with his steady tactical skills, Wilson with her scientific curiosity, and VEGA with its lightning-fast calculations. Maybe, just maybe, humans had something the other conquered species didn't. VEGA, send a message to Earth Command, Mason said. Tell them we're coming home with critical information and to prepare for the fight of our lives. As the Defiant raced back toward Earth, the unstoppable tide of the Variant Dominion followed behind them, unaware that this small blue planet might be different from all the others they had conquered. The emergency meeting room of Earth's United Defense Council was filled with raised voices and fear. On the main screen, the images of the Variant fleet that the Defiant had captured played on a loop. 76 massive warships against Earth's small fleet of 31. We should surrender immediately, shouted the representative from the Asian Alliance. You heard Captain Mason's report. These aliens have never been defeated and become slaves, countered the North American leader. We've never bowed to tyrants before. Captain Jack Mason stood silent at the back of the room, watching the argument go back and forth. Next to him, Engineer Reed fidgeted with a small device in her hands. A nervous habit. They're missing the point, she whispered to Mason. It doesn't matter if we fight or surrender. The Variant will take what they want either way. The Council's head admiral finally raised her hand for silence. Captain Mason, you've heard the alien refugees' story. What do you recommend? All eyes turned to him. Mason stepped forward, feeling the weight of humanity's future on his shoulders. We need more information, he said firmly. The Defiant can approach the Variant fleet and attempt communication. Maybe we can negotiate better terms than other species have received. Or at least buy us some time to prepare, Reed added. After more heated debate, the Council agreed. The Defiant would make first contact while Earth prepared whatever defenses it could. 12 hours later, the Defiant waited at the edge of the asteroid belt. The massive Variant fleet had stopped there, as if taking time to study the inner planets. VEGA, are you detecting any communications from their fleet? Mason asked. Yes, Captain. They are broadcasting on all frequencies in a language I don't recognize. However, I am detecting universal translation patterns. I believe they are attempting to communicate. Open a channel, Mason ordered. Let's introduce ourselves. The main screen lit up, showing an alien face. The variant looked vaguely reptilian, with gray-blue skin and large yellow eyes. Multiple small tentacles framed its face like a beard. "I am Overlord Krell of the Variant Dominion," the alien said in perfect English, its voice deep and emotionless. "You will surrender your planet and all resources to us immediately." Mason stood tall. "I am Captain Jack Mason of the United Earth Space Force. We wish to discuss terms that would benefit both our species." The alien's yellow eyes narrowed. "There are no terms, human. There is only surrender or destruction. You have 24 of your Earth hours to decide." Before Mason could respond, the transmission ended. "Well, that went well," said Lieutenant Bell from his tactical station, his voice heavy with sarcasm. Dr. Wilson studied her datapad. "This matches exactly what Kelvar told us. They make the same demand to every species." Mason turned to Reed. "What do you think, engineer? Any weaknesses you can spot in their ships?" Reed shook her head. "Not from this distance. We need to get closer." Mason nodded. "Then that's what we'll do." The Defiant moved quietly toward the massive Variant command ship. They were using every stealth technology they had, hoping to gather information without being detected. "Captain," VGA said suddenly, "a group of Variant ships is breaking formation and heading toward Jupiter's moon Europa." "Follow them," Mason ordered, "but keep your distance." They watched as 5 Variant ships approached Europa, where a small human research station housed 30 scientists. The station had been warned and evacuated, but its automated systems were still running. "What are they doing?" Dr. Wilson asked, leaning forward to see the screen better. The answer came a moment later. The lead Variant ship seemed to shimmer, and then a beam of distorted space shot toward the station. The effect was immediate and horrifying. The entire structure crumpled like paper, folding in on itself until nothing remained but twisted metal. "My God," whispered Bell. "The gravitational weapons." "VEGA, were you able to record that?" Mason asked, his voice tight. "Yes, Captain. Full sensor readings captured." "Captain," Reed shouted suddenly, "they've detected us. 3 ships are changing course, heading right for us." Mason made a quick decision. "Full power to engines. Get us out of here." The Defiant turned and accelerated away from the Variant ships. But they were gaining fast. "They're charging weapons," Bell reported. "Evasive maneuvers," Mason ordered. The ship lurched to the side just as space distorted where they had been a moment before. A second shot grazed their hull, causing the entire ship to vibrate violently. "Damage report," Mason called out. Reed studied her console. "Minor damage to the outer hull, but our shields are failing. Captain, we can't take a direct hit from those weapons." "I know," Mason said grimly. "VEJ, plot an emergency jump back to Earth." As the Defiant prepared to jump, Reed's eyes widened, staring at her readings. "Captain, I'm seeing something strange in the Variant weapons signature. There's a pattern to the gravitational distortion. It's not random." "Save that data," Mason ordered. "We'll study it when we're safe." The Defiant's experimental drive engaged, and the ship disappeared just as another Variant shot passed through the space they had occupied. Back at Earth, Mason presented the Council with the Defiant's findings. The room was silent as they watched the footage of Europa's research station being crushed. "Their power is beyond anything we have," the European representative said finally, her voice shaking. "But not beyond understanding," Reed said, stepping forward. She projected a series of complex readings. "Their weapons create a specific gravitational pattern before firing. If we could generate an opposing pattern." "You're talking about creating a counter-gravitational field?" asked the head scientist of the Council. "That's theoretically possible, but we've never been able to control gravity at that level." Reed smiled slightly. "The Defiant's experimental drive works by manipulating gravity on a small scale, if we could modify it." Mason finished her thought. we might be able to defend against their main weapon. The council exchanged looks of cautious hope. How long would these modifications take? The admiral asked. With full resources and no interruptions. 48 hours, Reed answered. But the variant gave us only 24 hours to surrender, the Asian representative pointed out. Mason's face hardened. Then I'll go back out there and buy us more time. How? Someone asked. By giving the variant something they've never encountered before, Mason replied. Resistance. As the council began to argue again, Mason pulled his core crew aside. Reed, start the modifications now. Bell, work with VEGA on tactical scenarios. Dr. Wilson, learn everything you can from Kelvar about variant biology. What are you planning, Captain? Wilson asked. Mason looked at each of them, his eyes determined. I'm planning to show the variant that they finally found a species that won't just roll over and die. As the crew of the Defiant rushed to prepare, the variant fleet moved closer to Earth, their victory seemingly assured as it had been thousands of times before. But for the first time, they were about to face something unexpected. Human determination. The clock was ticking. 23 hours had passed since the variant ultimatum, and Earth was in chaos. Some people fled to underground shelters, while others looked to the sky with weapons in hand. Most simply held their loved ones close, waiting. On the Defiant, no one had slept. Engineer Reed's hands were covered in burns and cuts as she worked furiously on the shield modifications. Captain Mason entered the engine room, carrying 2 cups of coffee. How's it coming? He asked, handing her a cup. Reed took it gratefully. The theory is solid. The variant weapons create a gravity well that crushes everything in its path. If we can generate a counterfield that inverts the gravitational wave. She pointed to a new device connected to the ship's main shield generator. Will it work? Mason asked directly. Reed gave a tired smile. Only one way to find out. The ship's intercom came alive with VGA's calm voice. Captain, the variant are moving. 3 of their ships have destroyed our Mars colony. Mason's face hardened. They're starting their show of force, just like Kelvar warned us. Earth had refused to respond to the surrender demand. Now the variant would begin destroying outer colonies one by one until Earth gave in, or was destroyed. How much longer do you need? Mason asked Reed. The modifications are finished, but this shield inverter is completely untested. VDGA ran simulations, but what did the simulations show? Mason pressed. Reed hesitated. If it works, we can repel their gravitational attacks. If it fails, the backlash could tear the Defiant apart. Mason nodded. And how many times can we use it? 3, maybe 4 times before the system burns out completely. The power requirements are enormous. Mason helped Reed to her feet. Then we'll make those 3 or 4 times count. On the bridge, Lieutenant Bell and Dr. Wilson were waiting with grim faces. The variant have destroyed the lunar mining facilities, Bell reported. Thousands dead. And they've sent another message, Wilson added. They say this is just a small demonstration of their power. Mason took his command chair. Are all systems ready? As ready as they'll ever be, Reed said from her station. VEGA, status of the shield inverter. The shield inverter is online, Captain. However, I must warn you that there is a 62% chance of critical failure upon first use. Mason took a deep breath. Noted. Set course for the variant command ship. The bridge fell silent. Finally, Bell spoke up. Sir, we're going to attack them directly. Not attack, Mason corrected. Demonstrate. The variant think we're helpless. Let's show them they're wrong. As the Defiant broke orbit and accelerated toward the variant fleet, Mason addressed the crew through the ship-wide comm. This may be the most important mission any human ship has ever undertaken. We face an enemy that has never known defeat. But today, that changes. Today, we show them that humans don't surrender easily. On the bridge of his massive command ship, Overlord Krell was surprised when his second-in-command reported a single Earth vessel approaching. "One ship?" Krell asked, his yellow eyes narrowing. "They send one ship against our fleet." "Yes, Overlord. It appears to be the same vessel that observed us at Europa." Krell made a sound that might have been laughter. "These humans are either very brave or very stupid. Bring it on screen." The image of the Defiant appeared, small and seemingly fragile against the backdrop of space. "Open a channel," Krell ordered. "I wish to speak to these fools before I destroy them." Captain Mason's face appeared on the screen. "This is Captain Jack Mason of the UES Defiant." "Captain Mason," Krell said with cold amusement, "you have ignored our ultimatum. Now you approach our fleet with a single ship. Explain this behavior." "I've come to negotiate," Mason replied calmly. "The time for negotiation has passed," Krell said. "Your colonies are already burning. Soon your homeworld will follow." "Before you continue," Mason said, "I thought you might want to see something." He nodded to someone off-screen. Krell gestured to his weapons officer. "Enough of this. Target their ship with a low-power gravitational pulse. Let them feel what awaits their planet." The Variant weapons officer obeyed, sending a gravitational beam toward the human ship. What happened next made every Variant on the bridge freeze in shock. The beam hit the Defiant and bounced back. The Variant ship shuddered as its own gravitational attack was reflected back, damaging one of its weapon arrays. "Impossible," Krell roared. "No species has ever deflected our weapons." On the Defiant, the bridge crew cheered as the shield inverter worked perfectly. "It worked," Reed shouted, checking her readings. "Shield inverter at 78% capacity after one use. 2 or 3 more shots before burnout," Mason noted. "Let's make them count. Bell, target their damaged weapon array. Fire pulse cannons." The Defiant's main weapons fired, striking the already damaged section of the Variant ship. It wasn't enough to destroy the massive vessel, but it caused visible damage. "Captain," VEGA reported, "the Variant fleet is repositioning. 12 ships are moving to surround us." Mason smiled. "They're taking us seriously now." "Reed, how's the inverter holding up?" "Ready for another round, but I don't know if we can handle 12 ships at once." Mason nodded. "We don't have to. We've shown what we came to show. Bell, plot an escape course." The Defiant turned and accelerated away from the Variant fleet. Behind them, Krell was ordering all ships to pursue the human vessel that had done the impossible. "They're all following us," Bell reported. "All 76 ships." "Good," Mason said. "That means they're not attacking Earth." Reed looked up from her console. "Captain, I've been thinking. The shield inverter works, but it has limited uses. If we could find a way to amplify the effect." "What are you suggesting?" Mason asked. "Our experimental drive works by manipulating gravity. If we could modify it to produce the same kind of inversion effect, but on a larger scale, we could create a weapon against their entire fleet," Mason finished. "It's risky," Reed warned. "We'd essentially be overloading the drive. It could destroy us in the process." Mason looked at his crew. Reed with her brilliant mind, Bell with his steady hands, Wilson with her scientific curiosity, and VEGA with its perfect calculations. Then he thought of Earth, waiting, hoping. "Begin the modifications," he ordered. "Let's give the Variant something they'll never forget." As the Defiant raced through space with the entire Variant fleet in pursuit, for the first time in centuries, Overlord Krell felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. These humans were different. They had done what no other species had managed. They had stood against the Variant and survived. The hunt was on, but no longer was the outcome certain. The unstoppable tide of the Variant had met its first obstacle, and that obstacle was human ingenuity. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Defend Earth at all costs." Earth's remaining fleet, 29 ships of various sizes, formed a defensive line between the planet and the approaching Variant armada. Against the 76 massive alien warships, they looked like toys. The Defiant raced back toward Earth, the entire Varant fleet in pursuit. Inside the engine room, Reed worked frantically to modify the experimental drive, while Mason coordinated with Earth's defenders. Admiral Chen, this is Captain Mason. We've discovered a weakness in the Varant weapons, but we need time to exploit it. How much time, Captain? Came the response. Mason looked at Reed, who held up 4 fingers. 4 hours, Admiral. There was a pause before Chen responded. We'll give you as much time as we can. But hurry, Mason. We won't last long against their weapons. Mason turned to Dr. Wilson. What have you learned from Kelvar about Varant biology? Wilson brought up a detailed scan on her tablet. The Varant have an unusual nervous system that's sensitive to certain radiation frequencies. Specifically, their command neurons can be temporarily disrupted by pulses in the delta epsilon range. Can we generate that kind of radiation? Mason asked. Not normally, Wilson answered. But if Engineer Reed's modifications work, the drive could produce a massive pulse at exactly that frequency. And what would that do to them? It wouldn't kill them, but it might temporarily disable their biological components. Most of their technology seems to be biomechanical, partly living tissue. Mason nodded. So we might be able to disable their ships without destroying them. In theory, yes, Wilson confirmed. But we'd have to get close, very close, to their command ship for the pulse to affect their entire fleet. Their ships are networked together. Lieutenant Bell spoke up from his tactical station. Captain, the first Varant ships are engaging Earth's fleet. The main screen showed the desperate battle beginning. Earth's ships fired everything they had, but their weapons barely scratched the Varant vessels. Then the aliens responded with their gravitational weapons. 2 human ships crumpled instantly. We need to draw their fire away from Earth, Mason said. VEJ, plot a course through the Varant fleet. We'll make ourselves the target. That's suicide, Captain, Bell protested. Not if we use the shield inverter, Mason replied. How many charges do we have left, Reed? Just 2, she answered without looking up from her work. And the second one will probably burn out the entire system. Then we'll make them count, Mason decided. Bell, take us in. Full speed. The Defiant raced toward the battle, its engines straining. As they approached, Mason broadcast on all frequencies. This is Captain Mason of the UES, Defiant to Overlord Krell. We're the ones you want. Come and get us. The tactic worked. Several Varant ships broke off their attack on Earth's fleet and turned toward the Defiant. They're taking the bait, Bell reported. 6 ships heading our way. Get ready with the shield inverter, Mason ordered. The first Varant ship fired its gravitational weapon. The Defiant's shield inverter activated, reflecting the attack back. The alien ship shuddered as its own weapon struck it. Inverter at 45% capacity, Reed reported from engineering. 1 more shot, Captain, then we're defenseless. Make it a good one, Mason replied. VEJ, identify the most vulnerable Varant ship and take us close. VEGA guided the Defiant toward a Varant vessel that showed signs of damage. The alien ship fired, and once again the shield inverter reflected the attack. This time, the Varant ship's hull cracked open, venting atmosphere into space. Shield inverter is completely burned out, Reed announced. But I've almost finished the drive modifications. 20 more minutes. We don't have 20 minutes, Bell warned as more Varant ships surrounded them. The Defiant shook violently as a glancing hit from a gravitational weapon damaged its port side. Hull breach in sections 12 through 15, VEGA reported. Emergency bulkheads holding. Another hit rocked the ship. Engine power dropping, Bell called out. We can't take much more of this. Mason made a quick decision. VEGA, set a course for Saturn's rings. We'll use them for cover while Reed finishes the modifications. The Defiant turned and accelerated toward Saturn, taking more hits as it fled. Pieces of the hull were torn away. But the ship kept going. "Captain," VEGA said suddenly, "I'm detecting a massive energy buildup in 3 Variant ships. They appear to be combining their gravitational weapons for a single powerful shot." "Evasive maneuvers," Mason ordered. The Defiant swerved, but the massive gravitational beam caught the ship's rear section. The entire vessel shuddered and alarms blared everywhere. "Direct hit to the engine section," VEGA reported. "Critical damage to all systems." In engineering, Reed was thrown across the room as consoles exploded around her. Lieutenant Bell raced to help her, pushing aside fallen debris. "Reed, are you okay?" She nodded weakly, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. "The drive modifications, almost complete, but the control systems are damaged. Someone needs to manually connect the final circuits." Bell looked at the exposed drive core, now pulsing with dangerous energy. "Where?" Reed pointed to a small access panel near the core. "In there, but the radiation levels are lethal. Whoever does it won't survive." Bell nodded grimly. "Get back to the bridge. Tell the captain I've got this." "Bell, no. Go," he ordered, already moving toward the access panel. "This is our only chance." On the bridge, Mason watched helplessly as Earth's fleet was being decimated. Only 7 ships remained, and they were falling quickly. Reed stumbled onto the bridge, her face streaked with blood and tears. "Reed, what happened? Where's Bell?" He's connecting the final circuits manually," she said, her voice breaking. "The radiation will kill them, but it was the only way." Before Mason could respond, the ship lurched as the experimental drive surged with power. "Captain," VGA announced, "Lieutenant Bell has successfully completed the modifications. The drive is ready to generate the radiation pulse, but we must get closer to the Variant command ship for maximum effect." Mason closed his eyes briefly, honoring Bell's sacrifice. Then he looked at his remaining crew. "Let's make sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain." VEGA set a direct course for Krell's command ship. Full remaining power, the damaged Defiant turned and accelerated toward the massive Variant command ship at the center of the fleet. More hits landed, tearing away at what remained of the human vessel. On the Variant command ship, Overlord Krell watched the approaching human vessel with growing concern. Why would the damaged ship head directly toward them? What were these humans planning? "Overlord," his second-in-command said nervously, "the human ship is on a collision course. Their engines are showing unusual energy readings." For the first time in his long life, Krell felt fear. "Destroy them," he roared. "All ships, focus fire on that vessel." The Defiant was now barely holding together, systems failing throughout the ship. But it kept moving forward, straight toward the heart of the Variant fleet. "Distance to target?" Mason asked, gripping his chair as the ship shook around him. 5,000 kilometers in closing, VEGA reported. "We need to be within 1,000 kilometers for maximum effect." Reed looked up from her console. "Captain, we won't survive another direct hit." Mason nodded. "I know, but neither will they." As the Defiant closed in on its target, the entire crew braced for what might be their final moments, and humanity's last hope. The Defiant was barely recognizable as a ship anymore. Its hull was torn open in dozens of places, with emergency force fields the only thing keeping atmosphere inside. Systems failed one after another as the damaged vessel pushed toward the Variant command ship. Hull integrity at 23%, VEGA reported. Life support failing in all sections except the bridge. Captain Mason looked at his remaining crew. Dr. Wilson worked frantically to treat Reed's injuries while still monitoring the alien data. Reed herself had managed to create a makeshift control panel for the modified drive, her hands moving quickly despite her injuries. "Distance to target?" Mason asked. 2,000 kilometers in closing, VEGA answered. "Variant ships are converging from all directions." The main screen showed the massive Variant command ship growing larger as they approached. Around it, dozens of other alien vessels moved to intercept the Defiant. Mason opened a channel to the Variant command ship. Overlord Krell, this is Captain Mason. After a moment, Krell's reptilian face appeared on screen. His yellow eyes were narrowed with both anger and confusion. You are beaten, human, Krell said. Your ship is falling apart. Your planet's defenses are crushed. Why do you continue this pointless resistance? Mason smiled slightly. Because that's what humans do. We don't surrender, even when all hope seems lost. I'm giving you one chance, Krell. Leave our system now and never return. Krell made a sound that might have been laughter. You offer me terms, when you are moments from destruction. Your species' arrogance is remarkable. Not arrogance, Mason replied calmly. Hope, something your people seem to have forgotten after conquering so many worlds without resistance. Mason nodded to Reed, who continued working on the drive controls. You have nothing to hope for, Krell insisted. My fleet will destroy your ship, then your planet. This is inevitable. Nothing is inevitable, Mason answered. That's another thing about humans. We make our own fate. He cut the transmission and turned to Reed. Status of the drive. Ready, Captain, she said. But we need to get closer. At least 1,000 kilometers. The ship shook violently as another gravitational beam struck its side. That was close, Wilson said, steadying herself against a console. Too close. One more direct hit and we're finished, Reed added. Mason nodded grimly. VAGA, all remaining power to engines and forward shields. Give us everything we've got. Acknowledged, Captain. The Defiant surged forward, engines glowing dangerously bright as they pushed beyond safe limits. More hits landed around them as the Variant ships fired continuously, but somehow the human vessel kept going. 1,500 kilometers, VEGA reported. Another hit tore off part of the ship's starboard section. Containment fields failing in sections 3 through 7, VEGA announced. Structural integrity at 14%. 1,200 kilometers. Reed's console sparked and died. She quickly moved to another. Captain, the drive controls are failing. We may only get one chance at this. Make it count, Mason told her. 1,000 kilometers, VEGA announced. We are within optimal range. Mason took a deep breath. Reed, activate the drive. Engineer Reed's hands flew over the controls. Drive activating now. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire ship began to vibrate as the experimental drive core pulsed with energy. The lights flickered and died, replaced by emergency red lighting. Power levels critical, VEGA warned. Core temperature exceeding safe parameters. Is it working? Mason asked, looking at Wilson. She checked her readings. The radiation pulse is building. It's reaching the frequency that should affect their neural systems. On the main screen, they could see the Variant command ship directly ahead. Around it, the other alien ships had stopped firing, as if uncertain what was happening. Pulse reaching maximum amplitude, Reed reported, her voice trained. The drive can't take much more. The vibration throughout the ship increased until it felt like the Defiant would shake itself apart. Now, Reed, Mason ordered. Reed slammed her hand down on the final control. The experimental drive flared with blinding energy, and a wave of invisible radiation burst outward from the Defiant in all directions. The effect on the Variant ships was immediate and dramatic. Their lights flickered and went out. The massive vessels began to drift aimlessly. It's working, Wilson exclaimed. Their biomural systems are shutting down. The wave continued to spread, striking ship after ship in the Variant fleet. None were spared. All drifted powerless in space. But the cost was high. The Defiant's drive core overloaded, sending cascading failures throughout the ship. All systems failing, VEGA reported, its voice distorting. Core breach imminent. Evacuation recommended. Mason hit the ship-wide comm. All remaining crew, get to the escape pods now. Abandon ship. Reed looked up from her dead console. The pods might not get away in time. We have to try, Mason insisted, helping her to her feet. Wilson, help Reed. I'll make sure everyone else gets out. As they hurried from the bridge, Mason stopped at a control panel and entered his command codes. What are you doing? Wilson asked. Making sure our sacrifice isn't wasted, he answered. VEGA, broadcast all our data and recordings to Earth. They need to know what happened here. Broadcasting now, Captain, VEGA replied, its voice growing fainter as systems continued to fail. The three of them made their way through the dying ship, helping injured crew members to the escape pods. With each passing minute, the Defiant shuddered more violently as its core approached critical failure. Finally, they'd reached the last functioning escape pod. Only 5 crew members remained alive out of the original 30. Everyone in, Mason ordered. There's no time left. As the others climbed into the pod, Mason took one last look at his ship. The Defiant had done the impossible. It had stood against the unstoppable tide of the Variant and turned it back. The escape pod launched just as the Defiant's core finally failed. The explosion lit up space like a new star, the shockwave pushing the small pod away from the disabled Variant fleet. From the pod's small viewport, the survivors watched as Earth's remaining ships cautiously approached the drifting alien vessels. They're defenseless, Wilson observed. The pulse worked even better than we hoped. Reed nodded tiredly. Bell would have been proud. Mason said nothing, still watching the scene. After a moment, his comm unit beeped. Captain Mason, this is Admiral Chen. We're picking up your escape pod. What's the situation? The Variant fleet is disabled, Mason reported. Their bioneural systems are disrupted by the radiation pulse. But it's temporary, maybe hours, maybe days. We need to secure their ships before they recover. Understood, Chen replied. Rescue teams are on their way to you now. And Captain, what you and your crew did today, there are no words. Earth stands because of you. 3 days later, Mason stood at a large window in Earth's orbital headquarters, watching as human teams worked to secure and study the Variant ships. Beside him, Reed and Wilson looked out at the same view. What happens now? Wilson asked quietly. Now we prepare, Mason answered. The Variant will return, eventually. But next time, we'll be ready. Reed nodded. And we won't be alone. Reports are coming in from throughout the galaxy. Other species that were conquered by the Variant are rising up, now that they know it's possible to fight back. Mason smiled slightly. One human ship stood strong and changed the fate of galaxies. Far beyond the edge of the solar system, the news was spreading from world to world, system to system. The unstoppable Variant had been stopped. The invincible fleet had been defeated. And it was done by a single ship from a small blue planet called Earth. The tide had turned, and humanity had led the way. The night shift at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station 7 was usually quiet. Most nights, Pete Wilson would drink his coffee, check the automated systems, and read old sci-fi novels to pass the time. For 15 years, humanity had been listening to the stars, hoping for a sign that they weren't alone. For 15 years, there had been nothing but cosmic background noise. Until tonight. Pete nearly spilled his coffee when the alert sounded. At first, he thought it was a system error. The computers were programmed to flag any non-random patterns in the cosmic background radiation. Usually, it was just a pulsar or some other natural phenomenon. This was different. The pattern repeated with mathematical precision. Not random, not natural. Artificial. Control, this is Station 7, Pete said, his voice trembling as he activated the emergency line. I think we've received a signal. Within hours, the best minds in astronomy, linguistics, and mathematics were working on the signal. The pattern was complex but undeniably artificial. After 3 days of non-stop analysis, Dr. Emma Reed, The head of the linguistics team called an emergency meeting. "It's a distress call," she announced to the room full of military and scientific personnel. "We're certain of it now. The mathematical patterns are universal across space. Prime numbers, basic equations. But embedded in them is something more. The signal comes from the Rigel system, about 860 light-years away." General Frank Harris frowned. "How can you be so sure it's a distress call?" Dr. Reed projected a series of waves onto the main screen. "Because it repeats with increasing urgency. The pattern intensifies, becomes more frequent. In human terms, it's like someone yelling louder and more frantically for help." The room fell silent. "So what do we do?" someone finally asked. "It would take hundreds of years to reach them with our current technology." Captain Tom Walker cleared his throat. At 45, Walker was one of Earth's most experienced space commanders. His weathered face had seen more time in orbit than most astronauts saw in their entire careers. "Not necessarily," he said. "Project Horizon might work." General Harris shot him a warning look. "Project Horizon is classified, Captain. With respect, sir, if there was ever a time to declassify it, it's now." The tension in the room grew. Project Horizon was Earth's experimental faster-than-light drive system. Theoretical until recently, the first prototype had been installed on a new vessel called the Defiance. It had never been tested at full capacity. 3 days later, the world's major governments held an emergency summit. For the first time in human history, all nations agreed on a single course of action. Humanity would answer the call. Captain Walker stood at attention in the White House Situation Room as the final decision came down. "Captain Walker, you and the crew of the Defiance will embark on humanity's first interstellar rescue mission," the president said. "Your experimental FTL drive is our only hope of reaching the Rigel system in time." Walker nodded. "How much time do we have for preparation, Mr. President?" 48 hours. The signal is getting more desperate." The next 2 days were a blur of activity. The Defiance, docked in Earth's orbit, was loaded with humanitarian supplies, medical equipment, and defensive weapons. No one knew what they would find at Rigel, but they wanted to be prepared. Walker's core crew consisted of the best Earth had to offer. Lieutenant Jane Miller, the ship's engineer, was a genius with propulsion systems. She had helped design the experimental FTL drive and knew it better than anyone. Communications officer Mark Davis was a former linguistics prodigy who had joined the space program to hear the stars speak. As he put it, science officer Alan Green had 3 fades and a gift for thinking outside conventional boundaries. The night before launch, Walker couldn't sleep. He stood at the viewport of his temporary quarters on the orbital station, looking down at Earth. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said behind him. Walker turned to find Dr. Reed, the linguist who had decoded the signal. "I always thought our first contact would be a peaceful exchange of knowledge," Walker said. "Not a rescue mission." Dr. Reed joined him at the viewport. "In a way, this is better. Our first act as an interstellar species will be to help others. I can't think of a better introduction." "If we can help them at all," Walker said. "We don't know what we're flying into. That's why we're sending our best." She handed him a data chip. "The latest analysis of the signal. There's something else embedded in it. Coordinates within the Rigel system. Whoever sent this was very specific about where help is needed." The launch the next day was watched by billions around the world. The Defiance, sleek and powerful, broke free from Earth's orbit and headed to the edge of the solar system, where the FTL drive could be safely engaged. On the bridge, Walker looked at his crew. "Final systems check. Lieutenant Miller, FTL drive at 100% capacity, Captain. All systems go." Officer Davis, "Communications active. We're still receiving the distress signal, stronger now that we're clear of Earth's interference." Officer Green, "Science stations operational. All sensors ready to gather data on our arrival." Walker took a deep breath. "Send the message to Earth Control." Davis nodded. "Sending now." Defiance departing solar system. We will reach Rigel in approximately 7 days at maximum FTL. We'll establish contact upon arrival. Understood, Defiance, came the reply from Earth. Godspeed. Walker settled into his command chair. Lieutenant Miller engaged the FTL drive. Miller's fingers danced over her console. FTL drive engaging in 3, 2, 1. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines, then blurred completely as the ship accelerated beyond the speed of light. The Defiance shuddered, then steadied as it crossed the threshold no human vessel had ever crossed before. They were on their way to answer the first extraterrestrial distress call humanity had ever received. Whatever waited for them at Rigel, Captain Walker and his crew were determined to help. It was humanity's first step into a larger universe, and they were going to make it count. What none of them knew was that their arrival would forever change the balance of power among the stars. The distress call wasn't just a plea for help. It was the beginning of humanity's rise as an interstellar power. As the Defiance raced toward Rigel, the signal grew stronger and more urgent. Something terrible was happening there, and humanity was about to find out what it was. Time behaved strangely at faster than light speeds. For the crew of the Defiance, the 7-day journey to the Rigel system stretched into a surreal experience. The ship hummed with a constant vibration as the experimental drive pushed them through space in ways humans had only dreamed about until now. Captain Walker established a strict routine to keep everyone focused. Daily briefings, system checks, and training scenarios filled their waking hours. Still, there was plenty of time to wonder what awaited them. On the 3rd day, Walker found Lieutenant Miller in the engine room, surrounded by holographic displays of the FTL drive. Her dark hair was tied back in a messy ponytail, and there were dark circles under her eyes. "Have you slept at all, Lieutenant?" Walker asked. Miller jumped slightly, then shook her head. "Not much, sir. I've been studying the drive's performance data." "Problems?" "Not exactly." She gestured to one of the displays. "The drive is actually performing better than expected. We're moving about 15% faster than our calculations predicted." Walker frowned. "Is that safe?" "That's what I've been trying to figure out." Miller pulled up another display. "The drive is somehow becoming more efficient as we travel. It's like it's learning the best way to move through space." "That wasn't in the design." "No, sir." Miller's eyes gleamed with excitement. "I think we've stumbled onto something new. If I can understand what's happening, I might be able to boost our efficiency even further. We could reach Rigel sooner than planned." Walker nodded. "Keep working on it, but get some sleep too. I need my engineer sharp." "Yes, sir." In another part of the ship, Communications Officer Davis sat with headphones on, listening intently to the alien distress signal. The signal had been growing stronger as they approached Rigel, and more complex too. Walker entered the communications lab. "Any progress?" Davis removed his headphones. "Definitely, Captain. The signal is much clearer now, and I'm picking up new patterns." He pulled up a visualization of the sound waves. "See these spikes here and here? They weren't visible in the original transmission we received on Earth." "What do they mean?" "I think," Davis hesitated, "I think they're words, sir, or whatever passes for words in their language." Dr. Reed's initial analysis was correct. This is definitely a distress call. But there's more to it now. Davis played a filtered version of the signal. Even to Walker's untrained ear, there was a rhythm to it, almost like speech. "This part here," Davis pointed to a repeating pattern, "appears over and over, with increasing urgency. And this section here." He highlighted another pattern. "This started appearing only recently as we got closer to Rigel. I think they know we're coming." Walker felt a chill run down his spine. "They can detect us. At this distance. Their technology must be far more advanced than ours in some ways," Davis said. "But there's something else, something troubling." He played another section of the signal. "These patterns here suggest they're under attack. The mathematical sequences have the same structure as the distress portion, but they're faster, more chaotic, like they're describing destruction. Walker's face hardened. Keep working on it. I want to know as much as possible before we arrive. Later that day, Walker called a meeting with his senior staff in the ship's conference room. Science Officer Green had been analyzing data from their long-range sensors as they approached the Rigel system. "What have you found?" Walker asked. Green, a tall man with prematurely gray hair, stood up and activated the room's holographic display. Rigel is a blue supergiant star with several planets orbiting it. Based on the signal's origin, we believe it's coming from the fourth planet in the system, which appears to be in the habitable zone, at least habitable for a species that can handle higher levels of radiation than humans. The hologram showed a bluish-green planet with 2 small moons. "What kind of life are we likely to find there?" Walker asked. "That's where it gets interesting," Green said, adjusting his glasses. "Based on the spectrographic analysis of the planet's atmosphere and the frequencies used in the distress signal, I believe the species that sent the call has a biology based on silicon rather than carbon." "Silicon-based life?" Lieutenant Miller asked. "I thought that was just science fiction." "Theoretically possible, just very different from life on Earth," Green explained. "Silicon can form complex molecules similar to carbon, but it requires different conditions. A hotter world, for one thing, which makes sense given Rigel's intensity." "What would they look like?" Davis asked. Green shrugged. "Hard to say for certain. Possibly crystalline structures instead of soft tissue. Their sensory organs would likely be tuned to different wavelengths than ours. Their concept of communication might be fundamentally different, which makes Davis's progress with the signal all the more impressive," Walker noted. "There's something else," Green said, his voice growing more serious. "Our long-range sensors are picking up energy signatures consistent with spacecraft in the Rigel system. Lots of them. And they're giving off radiation patterns that suggest weapons fire." The room fell silent. "We're heading into a war zone," Walker said finally. "It appears so, sir," Green confirmed. "And based on the energy outputs, the technology level is significantly beyond our own." Walker looked around at his crew. "We knew this mission would be dangerous. We're still going to help if we can, but we need to be prepared for anything. Lieutenant Miller, what's the status on your drive efficiency improvements?" "I've managed to boost our speed by another 8%, Captain. We could reach Rigel in about 36 hours instead of the original 48. "Do it," Walker ordered. "Officer Davis, continue working on the signal. Try to establish some kind of basic communication protocol we can use when we arrive. Officer Green, I want detailed scans of all ships in the system as soon as we're in range. Identify the aggressors if possible." As the meeting broke up, Walker remained behind, staring at the holographic image of the Rigel system. Humanity's first venture beyond their solar system was taking them straight into an alien conflict. The Defiance was well armed for a research vessel, but it wasn't a warship. If they found themselves in the middle of an interstellar war, their options would be limited. Still, they had come to answer a call for help. Walker wasn't about to turn back now. On the 6th day of their journey, as the Defiance approached the edge of the Rigel system, Davis burst onto the bridge, his face pale. "Captain, I've decoded more of the signal," he said breathlessly. "It's worse than we thought. The species sending the distress call, they're being systematically exterminated by some kind of invasive force. They're begging for help from anyone who can hear them." Walker's jaw tightened. "Estimated time to arrival?" 18 hours, sir," Miller reported from her station. "Push it to 15 if you can," Walker said. "We might already be too late." As the Defiance raced toward Rigel, the crew prepared for their first encounter with alien life, and possibly their first battle among the stars. None of them knew what awaited them, but they were determined to answer the call that had reached across light years to find them. Humanity's arrival was about to shake the stars in ways no one could predict. Dropping out of FTL in 3, 2, 1. Lieutenant Miller announced, her voice tight with tension. The Defiance shuddered as the experimental drive powered down. The view screen, which had shown only streaking stars during their journey, suddenly cleared to reveal chaos. Captain Walker leaned forward in his command chair. My God. Before them lay the Rigel system in all its terrible glory. The blue supergiant star dominated the view, but it was the scene closer to them that held everyone's attention. Dozens of spacecraft filled the space around the fourth planet. Some were small and nimble, darting between larger vessels. Others were massive, easily 10 times the size of the Defiance. Energy weapons crisscrossed the void, leaving glowing trails in their wake. Scan all vessels, Walker ordered. I want to know who's who. Science Officer Green bent over his console. 2 distinct types of ships, Captain. The larger ones appear to be the aggressors. They're heavily armed and show minimal damage. The smaller vessels are taking heavy losses. The distress signal is coming from the smaller ships. Communications Officer Davis confirmed, and from the surface of the planet below. Walker studied the battle. Even to his untrained eye, it was clear the smaller ships were fighting a losing battle. They moved with surprising speed and skill, but they were outgunned and outnumbered. Any sign they've detected us? Walker asked. Not yet, Green said. We're still at the edge of the system, but that won't last long with all these energy discharges. Someone's bound to notice us soon. As if on cue, Davis's console lit up. Captain, we're being scanned. Multiple sources. Walker took a deep breath. This was the moment humanity had prepared for. First contact with not one, but 2 alien species, and in the middle of what looked like a war. Open a channel, he ordered. All frequencies, and put our shields up, just in case. Davis worked his controls. Channel open, sir. Walker stood up straight. This is Captain Tom Walker of the Earth vessel Defiance. We received your distress call and have come to offer assistance. Please respond. For several tense seconds, there was no reply. Then Davis's console chimed. 2 responses, Captain. Different sources. On screen, Walker ordered. The view screen split. On one side appeared a crystalline being. Its body seemed to be made of translucent blue-green material that caught and reflected light. Where a human would have a face, this being had a cluster of crystal structures that pulsed with inner light. It had no mouth that Walker could see, yet when it spoke, the words came through clearly, translated by the ship's computers based on Davis's work with the distress signal. Earth vessel, the crystalline being said, its voice melodious despite the translation. I am Guardian Trell of the Lumi people. We thank you for answering our call. We did not know if anyone would hear us or come to our aid. On the other side of the screen appeared a very different being. This one was larger, with dark gray skin that looked almost metallic. Its eyes were yellow slits, and its mouth was filled with sharp teeth. Its head was elongated and crested with what looked like natural armor. I am Commander Dax of the Drex Empire, this being growled. You have entered Drex territory without permission. Leave immediately or be destroyed. Walker kept his expression neutral. We received a distress call from this system. Under Earth's laws and customs, we are obligated to respond. The Drex commander's yellow eyes narrowed. The Lumi are our property. Their distress is none of your concern. This system and all its resources belong to the Drex Empire by right of conquest. Guardian Trell's crystalline form pulsed more rapidly. We are not property. The Drex invaded our homeworld without provocation. They are stripping our planet of resources and enslaving our people. Many have already been killed. Your species is inefficient, Commander Dax said dismissively. You waste valuable minerals growing your crystal bodies when they could be better used by the Empire. Your existence is a luxury the galaxy cannot afford. Walker fought to keep his shock from showing. The casual cruelty in the Drex commander's words sent a chill down his spine. Perhaps we can negotiate a peaceful resolution, Walker suggested, though he could already see that diplomacy was likely to fail. Commander Dax bared his teeth in what might have been a smile. There is nothing to negotiate. The Lumi will be harvested. You will leave. These are the only acceptable outcomes. The transmission from the Drex ship cut off abruptly. Guardian Troll's crystal form dimmed slightly. I fear you have placed yourselves in danger by coming here, humans. The Drex do not negotiate. They only take. How many of your people are left? Walker asked. On our homeworld. Perhaps 2 million, Troll replied. Another 100,000 are scattered throughout our system in ships and on our moons. The Drex began their invasion 3 cycles ago. We had no weapons, no warships. We were a peaceful species devoted to art, science, and exploration. You built these ships since the invasion began. Green asked, impressed. Troll's body pulsed. We adapted quickly. Our science was advanced, but not directed toward war. We have learned much in our desperation. Walker nodded grimly. We'll need to know everything about the Drex ships. Their weapons, defenses, weaknesses. Captain, Green interrupted, looking up from his console. 3 Drex warships are breaking away from the main fleet. They're heading straight for us. Walker returned to his command chair. Battle stations. Lieutenant Miller, be ready to engage the FTL drive if we need to retreat. Sir, Miller said hesitantly, I've been studying the readings from the Drex ships. Their shields operate on a frequency our weapons might be able to penetrate. They're not designed to stop our particular type of energy weapons. Walker raised an eyebrow. Are you saying we might actually be able to fight them? I'm saying they might not be as invulnerable as they think, Miller replied. Walker turned back to the view screen, where Guardian Trell was waiting. Guardian, we came here to help, and that's what we intend to do. But I need to know, if we engage the Drex, will your remaining ships support us? Trell's crystalline form brightened. We will fight with you until the last of us shatters, Captain Walker. The Lumi may be peaceful by nature, but we will not go extinct without a struggle. 3 Drex warships now in weapons range, Green reported. They're charging weapons. Walker looked at his crew. Each face showed determination mixed with fear. They had come to answer a distress call, and now they were about to engage in humanity's first interstellar battle. Target the lead ship, Walker ordered. Let's show the Drex that humanity answers when the innocent call for help. The Defiance's weapons powered up, their unique energy signature unlike anything the Drex had encountered before. As the first shots were fired, no one on either side yet realized that this moment would change the balance of power among the stars forever. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Defiance shuddered as its main weapons fired for the first time in actual combat. Streams of concentrated energy lanced out toward the lead Drex warship. Direct hit. Science Officer Green called out, his voice rising in surprise. Their shields are fluctuating. Captain Walker leaned forward in his command chair. Again. Target the same spot. On the view screen, they could see their energy beams striking the Drex ship's shields. Where the beams hit, the shields flickered and weakened. They're returning fire, Green warned. The Defiance rocked as enemy weapons impacted against its shields. Alarms blared throughout the ship. Shields holding at 82%, Lieutenant Miller reported, but they won't last long against sustained fire. Walker studied the tactical display. The 3 Drex warships were spreading out, trying to surround the Defiance. They were clearly used to fighting as a coordinated unit, but they were also clearly surprised by the effectiveness of the human ship's weapons. Evasive maneuvers, Walker ordered. Lieutenant Miller, can you modify our shields to better withstand their weapons? Miller's fingers flew across her console. Working on it, Captain. Their energy weapons operate on a different spectrum than ours. I'm adjusting our shield harmonics to compensate. The ship lurched as it changed direction, barely avoiding another barrage from the Drex ships. Captain, Davis called from the communication station. The Lumi ships are moving to assist us. 6 of them are engaging the Drex warships. Walker watched as the smaller, nimbler Lumi vessels darted around the Drex ships, firing what appeared to be energy weapons of their own. They weren't as powerful as the Defiance's weapons, but they were forcing the Drex to divide their attention. "Open a channel to the Lumi ships," Walker ordered. Davis worked his console. "Channel open, sir." "Lumi vessels, this is Captain Walker. Let's coordinate our attack. Your ships are faster than ours. If you can keep the Drex distracted, we can target their shield generators." Guardian Troll's voice came through the speakers. "Understood, Captain Walker. We will draw their fire." The battle quickly took on a new rhythm. The Lumi ships darted in and out, never staying still long enough for the Drex to get a solid lock on them. Meanwhile, the Defiance hammered away at the Drex shields with its more powerful weapons. "Their shields are failing," Green announced as one of the Drex ships listed to the side, energy bleeding from a wound in its hull. Walker allowed himself a small smile. "Target their weapon systems next." The Defiance's main guns fired again, striking the damaged Drex ship precisely where its main weapon battery was located. There was a flash of light as the weapon system overloaded and exploded, leaving a gaping hole in the ship's side. "One down," Walker said. "Two to go." But the remaining Drex warships had learned from their companions' fate. They changed tactics, moving more erratically and focusing their fire on the Lumi ships rather than the Defiance. "They're targeting our allies," Green said. "The Lumi ships don't have shields as strong as ours." Walker watched as a Lumi vessel took a direct hit. The small ship spun out of control, trailing debris and what looked like crystalline fragments. "Intercept course," Walker ordered. "Get between those ships and the Drex." The Defiance surged forward, placing itself between the Drex warships and the remaining Lumi vessels. The human ship's shields flared as they absorbed the enemy fire. "Shields down to 47%, Miller reported. "We can't take much more of this." Walker turned to her. "You said our drive was performing better than expected. Can we use that somehow?" Miller's eyes widened. "The FTL drive. In combat." Then understanding dawned on her face. "Actually, yes. We could create a controlled FTL burst. It would generate a shockwave that might disrupt their systems. How close would we need to be?" "Very close, sir. Almost point-blank range." Walker nodded. "Plot a course directly between those two ships. We'll give them a taste of human ingenuity." The Defiance turned and accelerated toward the two remaining Drex warships. The enemy vessels, surprised by the direct approach, split apart, trying to flank the human ship. "Now, Lieutenant," Walker ordered as they passed between the Drex ships. Miller activated the FTL drive for just a split second. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A wave of distorted space-time burst outward from the Defiance, washing over the Drex ships. Their shields collapsed instantly, and their systems flickered and died. "Both Drex ships are disabled," Green reported with awe in his voice. "All their systems are offline." Walker didn't waste the opportunity. "Target their engines and weapons. Make sure they can't get back in this fight." The Defiance's weapons fired again, systematically disabling the critical systems of both Drex warships. Within minutes, they were drifting, powerless. "Captain," Davis called, "I'm picking up a transmission from deeper in the system. It's a lot of transmissions. The main Drex fleet has noticed what happened here." Walker grimaced. They had won this skirmish, but they couldn't hope to defeat an entire fleet. "How many ships?" Green checked his sensors. "At least 30 capital ships, sir. And they're heading this way." The bridge fell silent. They had accomplished what seemed impossible, defeating 3 advanced alien warships. But now they faced overwhelming odds. Guardian Troll's voice broke the silence. "Captain Walker, your ship has done something we thought impossible. You've proven the Drex can be defeated, but you must not sacrifice yourselves. There are too many of them." Walker considered their options. They could run, return to Earth with what they'd learned, but that would mean abandoning the Lumi to their fate. Guardian Troll, Can your people hold out a little longer? Earth will want to help once they know what's happening here. Troll's voice was solemn. We have survived for 3 cycles already, Captain. We will continue to fight as long as there are Lumi left to resist. But I fear the Drex will accelerate their harvesting now that they know outside help has arrived. Walker turned to Davis. Send a message to Earth. Full report on everything we've encountered. Include all sensor data on Drex ships and weapons. Tell them. He paused. Tell them we need a fleet. Davis nodded and began composing the message. Lieutenant Miller, how quickly can we get back to Earth using the FTL drive? Miller looked up from her calculations. With the improvements I've discovered. About 5 days, sir. And how long until the main Drex fleet reaches us? Green checked his sensors again. At their current speed, about 3 hours. Walker made his decision. We're going to hold position as long as we can. Help the Lumi evacuate as many of their people as possible from the most vulnerable positions. Then we'll lead the Drex on a chase away from this system before jumping back to Earth. You intend to be bait, Captain? Green asked. Walker nodded. The Drex seem arrogant. They underestimated us once. Let's hope they do it again. As the crew prepared for their desperate plan, Walker gazed at the view screen, where the beautiful blue-green planet of the Lumi hung in space. Humanity had come to answer a distress call, and in doing so had stumbled into a war. But they had also discovered they weren't as outmatched as they feared. The Drex may have been conquering this region of space for centuries, but they had never encountered humans before. They had no idea what they had awakened. Prepare to engage the main Drex fleet, Walker ordered, his voice steady despite the odds against them. Let's show them that humanity stands with those who call for help. Main Drex fleet closing in. Science Officer Green announced, his voice tense. 18 minutes until they're within weapons range. Captain Walker stood at the center of the Defiance's bridge, studying the tactical display. The evacuation of the most vulnerable Lumi positions was proceeding, but too slowly. They needed more time. Guardian Trell, Walker said into the open communication channel, we need to get more of your people to safety. How many have you managed to evacuate so far? The crystalline being's voice came through clearly. Nearly 10,000 from our orbital stations, but there are still many more, and the Drex are targeting our transports. Walker turned to his science officer. What are we looking at? Green? Give me options. Green had been working nonstop, analyzing the data they'd gathered on both the Lumi and the Drex. He looked up from his console, an unusual expression on his face. Captain, I've been studying the Lumi biology based on the readings we've taken. There's something remarkable about them. He pulled up a display showing the molecular structure of a Lumi. Their crystalline bodies aren't just for show. They're living silicon-based computers, capable of storing and processing enormous amounts of data. How does that help us right now? Walker asked, impatient. It might not help in battle, Green admitted. But I also been analyzing some medical data Guardian Trell shared with us. The Lumi have developed medical technology far beyond our own. Their understanding of cellular manipulation could revolutionize human medicine. They might have cures for diseases we've struggled with for centuries. Walker understood immediately. This wasn't just about saving an alien species anymore. It was about what the Lumi could offer humanity. The Drex wanted to harvest the Lumi for their physical resources, but they were overlooking the true value: knowledge. Davis, Walker turned to his communications officer. Add that to the message to Earth. Make sure they understand what's at stake here. Yes, sir, Davis replied, updating the transmission. Walker made his decision. We're changing the plan. We're not running. Sir? Miller looked up from her station, surprised. The Drex haven't defeated us yet because they underestimate us. Let's use that. Walker turned back to the tactical display. Miller, can we do that FTL burst again? Yes, but not right away. The drive needs time to cool down. How many bursts could we manage in one battle? Miller thought for a moment. Maybe 3, spaced about 15 minutes apart. Walker nodded. That gives us something to work with. Here's the plan. We're going to make the Drex think Earth has already sent a fleet. Davis raised an eyebrow. A bluff. Sometimes perception is more powerful than reality. Walker smiled. Open a channel to the approaching Drex fleet. Make sure it's broadcasting on all frequencies so the Lumi can hear it too. Davis worked his console. Channel open. Sir. Walker stood tall, facing the view screen. Attention Drex fleet. This is Captain Tom Walker of the Earth warship Defiance. You have witnessed what one human ship can do against your forces. Be advised that a full battle group from Earth is already en route to this system. We are the Vanguard, sent to assess the situation. Our fleet carries weapons specifically designed to penetrate Drex shields. He paused for effect. We have established an alliance with the Lumi people. Any further aggression against them will be considered an act of war against Earth. I suggest you withdraw from this system immediately. There was a long pause before a response came. The view screen showed a larger, more decorated Drex than Commander Dax. This one wore what appeared to be armor made from some dark metal, adorned with symbols of rank. I am High Commander Vorn of the Drex Empire, the alien growled. Your single ship does not concern us, human, and your claimed fleet is a transparent deception. No species has successfully challenged the Drex Empire in 1,000 cycles. Walker remained impassive. You're making an assumption based on ignorance, High Commander. Your forces have never encountered humans before. You have no idea what we're capable of. We encountered your pathetic ship, Vorn sneered. We learned all we need to know. Did you? Walker asked. 3 of your warships disabled by 1 human vessel. Does that suggest to you that we're weak? Or does it suggest that what you've seen so far is just a fraction of our capabilities? The Drex commander's yellow eyes narrowed, but uncertainty flickered in them. Walker pressed his advantage. The choice is yours, High Commander. Withdraw now, or face the consequences when our main fleet arrives. The Drex commander cut the transmission without responding. They're still coming, Green reported. No change in their approach. Walker hadn't expected them to retreat so easily. All hands, battle stations. Lieutenant Miller, prepare for evasive maneuvers. We'll need perfect timing on those FTL bursts. As the crew prepared for battle, Guardian Trull contacted them again. Captain Walker, I shared your message with all Lumi. It has given our people hope. Whatever happens now, know that you have already done more for us than we could have expected from strangers. We haven't won yet, Walker replied. Perhaps not, Trull said, but you have shown the Drex can be defeated. That alone changes everything. The next few hours were chaos. The Defiance darted between much larger Drex ships, using its superior maneuverability and the periodic FTL bursts to disrupt enemy formations. The Lumi ships, inspired by the human vessel's bravery, fought with renewed vigor. The Drex, for their part, seemed confused by the tactics. They were used to overwhelming force, not guerrilla warfare in space. Each time they thought they had the Defiance cornered, Miller would execute an impossible maneuver or Walker would order a targeted strike that exposed a weakness in Drex defenses. 5 hours into the battle, with the Defiance's shields failing and power reserves critically low, Davis suddenly called out from his station. Captain, I'm picking up multiple FTL signatures at the edge of the system. Walker's heart sank. Had the Drex called for reinforcements? Identification, he asked, bracing for bad news. Davis's face broke into a wide grin. They're ours, sir. Earth ships. 5 of them, including 2 heavy destroyers. The bridge erupted in cheers. Walker could hardly believe it. How is that possible? We only sent the message yesterday. Miller looked up from her console. The FTL signal must have traveled faster than we thought. Earth must have dispatched ships immediately. On the view screen, they watched as 5 human vessels dropped out of FTL travel. They were not as sleek as the Defiance, being older models retrofitted with experimental FTL drives. but they were heavily armed. Incoming transmission from the lead ship, Davis reported. Admiral Helen Foster's face appeared on screen. Captain Walker, this is Admiral Foster aboard the Dauntless. Sorry we're late to the party. When we received your message, the Security Council convened an emergency session. It was unanimous. Humanity stands with the Lumi. Walker couldn't hide his relief. Your timing is perfect, Admiral. We've been keeping the Drex distracted, but we're running on fumes. Well, the cavalry has arrived, Admiral Foster replied with a grim smile. And we brought some new toys specifically designed based on your data about Drex shields. Within an hour, the tide of battle had shifted dramatically. The Drex, faced with 6 human ships using weapons they had no defense against, began to retreat. 3 of their largest vessels were disabled or destroyed. The rest formed up and accelerated away from the planet. They're running, Green confirmed, astonishment in his voice. Davis listened to his headset. Message from High Commander Vorn. Audio only. Let's hear it, Walker said. Vorn's voice was cold with rage. This is not over, humans. You have made an enemy of the Drex Empire today. We will return in force. Walker exchanged glances with Admiral Foster on the view screen. We'll be waiting, he replied simply. 3 days later, Captain Walker stood in a vast, crystalline chamber on the Lumi homeworld. The air was thinner than Earth's but breathable, and the higher radiation was within tolerable limits for short visits. Around him stood his crew, Admiral Foster, and several Lumi Guardians, including Trell. Today we formalize our alliance, Trell announced, his crystalline body glowing with vibrant colors. The Lumi and humans stand together against the Drex threat. Admiral Foster nodded. Earth has already begun constructing more ships with FTL capability. Within a year, we'll have a proper fleet to help defend your world. Trell's form pulsed with light, and we will share our medical technology with Earth, as promised. Already, our scientists have adapted several treatments for human biology. Walker looked around at the gathered beings, human and Lumi together. What had started as a response to a desperate call for help had become the beginning of humanity's emergence as an interstellar power. As he prepared to return to the Defiance, Walker received a message from Earth. The Security Council had reviewed all the data they'd sent back about the Drex Empire. Intelligence analysts had determined that the Drex had conquered dozens of systems and subjugated numerous species over centuries. But now, for the first time, they had encountered a species they couldn't easily defeat, humans with their unique technology and their willingness to fight for strangers who called for help. In response, Earth had already established colonies on 3 previously uninhabited systems near Rigel, creating a defensive perimeter. More ships were being built. Alliances were being formed with other species who had suffered under Drex rule. The distress call that had reached across the stars had done more than save the Lumi. It had awakened humanity to the wider galaxy and its dangers, and to humanity's unexpected strength among the stars. The Drex had no idea what they had started, but they would soon find out.